Hello and welcome once again to Louisville Focus. We're at Locust Grove, which is not only an important part of Louisville history, but it is a National Historic Landmark, and they are celebrating their 60th anniversary of being a museum. So we thought there wouldn't be a better time to give you a little bit more of a comprehensive look. It's not what you learned on a field trip. We're going to take a closer look at Locust Grove. Welcome into Locust Grove. We have already established that, yes, it is a historic national landmark. Why is it so significant? With me now is Helen Dawkins. She is the marketing coordinator here at Locust Grove. Okay, so why should folks know more about Locust Grove, Helen?
Well, Locust Grove is a circa 1792 Georgian mansion. We are situated on 55 acres worth of farmland, woodlands, and pollinator fields. We're a pretty significant section of the East End. A lot of people say the first time they come here is for a field trip. And so, you hear somebody say, oh, Locust Grove, yeah, I went there once in third grade, but what else is there? First thing we really like to focus on is that, before anything else, this was indigenous land. So Locust Grove, as well as the rest of Kentucky, sits on the land that used to belong to people like the Shawnee, the Osage, the Cherokee, the Miami tribes, and they were here. This land was used for primarily a lot of trade, as homelands, as travel grounds, as sacred spaces, things like that, mostly due to its proximity to the river. We're about less than a mile from the Ohio River. So there was a lot of people coming and going here before the Krons and Clarks.
Wow. The indigenous importance of Locust Grove remains important to you. In fact, talk a little bit about how you pay tribute to that.
Absolutely. Well, we make a commitment almost every day to continue researching or honoring the people that were here before Locust Grove was. We have an indigenous person on staff, Raina Melvin. She's our director of programs and engagement, as well as our director of interpretation. They both work really hard trying to find more information about these people, and we want to really do them right by what we do here every day.
Our theme seems to be, Harlan, we're talking about the fact that more than what you learned on a field trip, more than just an art fair, more than a place that you attended for a wedding, Locust Grove really is historically important, educational, lots of good layers here, lots of reasons to visit, right?
Absolutely, yeah. There's kind of something for everyone here. Like you said, a field trip, a wedding, things like that. But even just our history. We've got the indigenous history pre-Kron, we have the Krons, then we have the Clarks, then we have George Rogers Clark and Lewis and Clark and all the Clarks. And then we have, the enslaved community that were here. There were over 100 people enslaved here across time. And we like to really tell every aspect of the story. You might have heard, oh yeah, that place was George Rogers Clark's house, but we want to bring you here to learn more.
And if there was ever a time to visit Locust Grove, this would be a special time because from what I understand, Harlan, 60 years of being an actual museum.
Yes, correct? Yes. We opened on October 4th, 1964. So we're now 6 decades later. We've got some things in the works to celebrate, but it's a pretty exciting time here.
All right. Is there a website they can go to if someone wants to check out all that information?
Absolutely. We actually just got a new website, so it's all new and pretty. It's www.locustgrove.org.
All right. Now let's learn more about the families that lived here at Locust Grove. I am joined now by Caitlin Tisdale, who is the Director of Interpretation. Okay, I might not be the Director of Interpretation, but this looks like the Hollywood Walk of Fame here at Locust Grove. It's kind of the equivalent, isn't it?
It is a little bit. It's a bit of a who's who of who visited here at Locust Grove, who lived here at Locust Grove. So we like to have this as a really quick introduction to our visitors about what they can expect on a tour here any given day.
Yeah, Caitlin, I was going to say it's interesting. You touched upon this. Yes, it's an historical location here and an historical national landmark, but people actually lived in this home. It was a family home at one time. Talk a little bit about those families.
Yeah, could you imagine knowing that people are going to snoop around your house 200 years from now?
Wow, that's a thought. Yeah, there you go.
Well, the Kon family originally had this home built from 1792 to 95, and it was the home of William Kron, who was a major in the Revolutionary War, and his wife Lucy Clark Kron. Now, the home wasn't actually saved for William. museum. It was actually saved because it was the final home of Lucy's brother, General George Rogers Clark. So the history of Locust Grove is actually a huge monument to the history of the Revolutionary War. William Kon fought the Revolutionary War in the East, and his brother-in-law, General George Rogers Clark, fought the Revolutionary War in the West. So we get to really talk about both sides of that campaign, but at Locust Grove, that was built after the war. So we're actually talking about the creation of this early republic and then tying that into our state's history here in Kentucky.
Interesting. Yeah, Caitlin, you said something to me. We had a brief discussion before we started the interview, and you said lifelong learning is important here, because when I think of Locust Grove, probably because I'm a Louisvillian, I always think about the field trips that I took and what I learned here, and that was significant and important, but it's good for old folks like myself. You can learn at Locust Grove too, right? I can do that.
Absolutely, absolutely. So yeah, we are a center for non-traditional education. So what that means is we can get students here on field trips, we can have adults here on vacation, and then we can have older people, they're retired, they want to come in and volunteer, and they help give tours, and they help with our special events. At every stage of life, Locust Grove has a spot where you can learn a little bit of something and you can teach a little bit of something.
Yeah, I think it's interesting that, yes, you talked about the Civil War and the importance thereof, and of course, and there's a reason it's a National Historic Landmark, but there is some relevance today to things that are going on in this country, and to Locust Grove, some tie-ins there. Do you get people comment on that much, or say, wow, this really has helped me and understand the need for inclusiveness and bringing people together?
Absolutely. So Locust Grove was a site of enslavement. William Kon and George Rogers Clark were both enslavers during their lifetimes. And so a huge shift in our interpretation just since my arrival has been to really tell those inclusive stories, but in a way that's approachable and sensitive to any visitor that walks through the door. So from field trips, we get to introduce students to stories of resilience and brilliance and knowledge and excellence, even amidst slavery. On tours, we get to tell stories of real people and share their names and their descendants' names. So engaging the descendants community into our stories today, and having them be a voice in what stories are told here, has had a huge impact on what Locust Grove can do as a member of the community.
Yeah, you make a great point there, because we talk often about how you need to take a look at the past to change the future. And so you don't run from history. In fact, you can take a pretty good hard look at it. I think some of us tend to, and I'm guilty at times, of saying, that's so horrific and I want to look away from it. But unfortunately, it's important to really understand it. And it wasn't all bad. Daily life here, I could see to where it'd be very, for some, nice, but on the other hand, there's the hard reality of what was going on as well on the other side, correct?
Right. I think all of these stories are so nuanced, and they take a lot of time to contextualize. And so that's the great thing about taking a tour at Locust Grove, is we have an hour and 15 minutes of your time. So from the moment that you start your tour until you end your tour, you're getting a lot of different stories of a lot of different people. We're sharing that more than one thing can be true at a time. Enslaved people here at Locust Grove were oppressed. They had their agency taken away, but that doesn't mean that there was an absence of love and community among them. So being able to highlight their stories and then also connect that with our students that come in for field trips, and showing that there is more to this history about slavery that you can learn. There's generational skill, there's global connections that we can make, that we can help our 3rd through 5th graders that come on field trips become global thinkers.
Caitlin, you just said a word right there that I want to talk about. You said global, and we know this is a National Historic Landmark. So global, nationally, you see people from all over the world come and visit. What are their thoughts when they're just learning of American history, and you've got such an authentic, it's not a replica, it's the authentic real thing. What are the comments that you hear? What do people say?
That it's still so new is one of the big comments that we get, especially from our visitors from Europe. Just last week we had a couple from Paris, and they're still looking at this house and they're like, well, it's so modern compared to some of the history that they see every day around them. The United States is getting ready to celebrate America 250 in a couple of years, and so while to us 250 years years seems like an incredibly long time to people that live in countries that have centuries upon centuries of their history. It can seem a little bit underwhelming.
So, Caitlin, you said time, so let's talk about this. Is a kind of a unique time here at Locust Grove, the 60th year of being a museum. Talk about that and why it is important to move forward and for people to be aware of, educate their children here at Locust Grove. Talk about the importance for you as someone who is all about interpretation of that continuing.
Well, I think there's just so many different ways that we can plug in our interpretation to what anyone is interested in. If we have someone interested in science, we can talk to them about the scientific farming that was taking place here at the time period. If we have somebody interested in math, we can talk to them about all of the math that went into surveying land in the Revolutionary War period and after. If we have somebody interested in women's rights, hey, let's talk about all of the women that lived here at Locust Grove, both free and enslaved. I think there's a different way for us to contextualize our stories and frame our stories for it to be relatable and accessible to anyone that walks in the door.
Okay, I'm going to lure someone here, okay? I want to give them a hook. So I'm going to throw a curveball at you, but I bet you do well with this, okay? So give me a piece of trivia that you found really interesting. Maybe it was about a family member. Maybe it was about George Rogers Clark, whoever it may be. Tell me a little bit of a trivia little note here that I can take away.
Oh man, there's too many.
That I do believe.
There's too many for me to choose from.
You could probably pick one out every time you take a walk, right?
The Kon family history can connect to both Theodore Roosevelt and Queen Victoria at the same time.
So the old 9 degrees of separation kind of thing or whatever it is? Yeah, okay.
Always.
Interesting. That is interesting. The importance of volunteerism. You know, we're very proud in this community of what you've accomplished here. The fact that it is a National Historic Landmark. So talk about your volunteers and the kind of people who really maybe gravitate to be a part of this here at Locust Grove.
Absolutely. We have volunteers of all ages here. Our youngest volunteer, I think he just turned 14. Our oldest volunteer, she wouldn't mind me saying it, she's over 90. You know, we have volunteers that help us with giving tours. They have a lot of training that they get from me and other staff members before they do that. So again, this lifelong learning piece is so important here. But we also have volunteers that help greet visitors during special events, or our lecture ladies that help bake baked goods for lecture afternoons. We also have people that help with our book sales. We have one of the largest book sales in the city. Used books is just $1 or $2 depending on what your interest is. And they help sort books and sell books and connect people with Locust Grove while they're here. So we can cover just about anything that you're interested in.
Caitlin, there's an artifact here that I think has a volunteer component to it. And I think whether you're young or old, but specifically if you're young, this artifact is fascinating. Tell us about it.
Yeah, so we have a wonderful replica dollhouse that was actually done by volunteers here at Locust Grove, I believe in 1979. So when you look at this dollhouse, you see an incredible step back in time, but it's also prior to the restoration of the house. So what you're seeing is the interior of Locust Grove as it was in 1979 before we restored it with all of the period wallpaper and furnishings. So you get to see a little bit of past and present there. But yeah, that was done by volunteers and took an incredible amount of skill and dedication. So we love that when kids see that, it reminds them of home. It kind of gives them this really great comforting peace. And then they get to go into the big house and they see everything come to life.
Caitlin, I want to take this time to thank you for your expertise. And despite what you've heard, I did not grow up here at Locust Grove. Okay?
I wouldn't believe it if someone told me.
Oh, you are so nice. Once again, Caitlin Tisdale, she is the Director of Interpretation. And again, taking a deep dive here at Locust Grove, we encourage you to visit. There is certainly a popularity now for period pieces like the Gilded Age or Bridgerton. And if you want to watch a piece like that, what do you notice? You notice authenticity, wardrobe, sets. Certainly here at Locust Grove, it is very authentic. With me now is Helen Binck Barnes, and she is a screenwriter as well as, I guess, a playwright as well, right, Helen?
Yes, that's correct.
Welcome in.
Thank you, John. Pleased to be here.
You know, I'm really interested in hearing about your film. But what I mentioned there, the importance of authenticity, does it get any more authentic than it does here at Locust Grove?
Truly it doesn't. I mean, the work that's been put into this building, it is, I'll let the caretakers and the folks that have done an amazing job here at Locust Grove speak for themselves, but truly this is one of a kind. There are a couple other plantations that are historical in town that I know of. There's a Farmington, there's also Black Acre, but this space is truly magnificent. From the paint that you noticed, the neon green paint, this is all original. So they've really gone out of their way to make sure this is authentic as possible.
Yes, this is a National Historic Landmark,
Yeah.
and you're going to go down in history, I'm telling you, because well, you're a pioneer. We talk about more film production being done here in Kentucky and specifically Louisville. You're doing that. So you and I had a brief conversation about your film. I'm fascinated. Tell them a little bit about your film and what it's about.
Yeah, thank you, John. So it is a story of love. We are working on a feature film about the life of Lucy and Thornton Blackburn. They came from Louisville. Thornton was born in Maysville, Kentucky, and so it's a story about Kentucky, and it's also a story of escape. They escaped slavery by the power not only of love, but of community. We talked a little bit about that earlier as well, through the Underground Railroad and folks just like you and I that came together across racial boundaries to do something they believed in, which was to fight for this couple for their freedom. So to me, it's not only important that we talk about slavery and the oppression and the heartache and the torture that they lived with, but also the positive side of it, which is the story of love, the story of community coming together.
Yeah, whenever there are challenges, and in this case, during that time period, I mean, some of this was life and death struggle.
Right.
But there are also people who step up and either overcome or at least fight to overcome. And that story was important to you. Talk to me about what drew you to making this film.
Yeah, so I started off at U of L Archive. So I don't know if you're familiar with Tom Owens. I know everyone, he's a legend.
He's a walking history book.
He is. So I went to him originally about Cassius Clay, who Muhammad Ali was named after Cassius Clay. He was an abolitionist that worked with Lincoln, and I was really inspired by his story. The original Cassius Clay was a white man who worked, after Lincoln's death, he still worked as an abolitionist, a politician, and then there was an assassination attempt on his life. He fought everyone off, and he's just a legend. So I was like, hey, Tom, I want to do this story about Cassius. And he was like, hold on, I have something even better for you to work on. And I was like, okay. And he's like, Lucy and Thornton Blackburn. And I was like, well, I've never heard of them. Who is that? And he's like, you'd be surprised. A lot of people don't know who they are or where they're from or anything about them, but they come right here from Louisville. So that's how it began.
I would think when you're looking at making a film, and we all know this, but you intimately know this, you're looking at budgets, you're looking at the cost of sets and that kind of thing.
Right.
So being here at Locust Grove, not only the correct, I guess, frame and backdrop, but also for you, it probably kind of lives and breathes a little bit. When you're here, it seems very authentic.
It does. And, this grounds is actually like hollowed. There's a cemetery out towards the east. There's some unmarked graves back in the forest area. So people really lived here, they worked here, they died here. And so the cast and I talk about that all the time when we're here. It's like you can feel the living, breathing history in the building, in the grounds, everywhere you are. So
the name of this film, and I'd be interested to know, without giving away the entire plot, because we want folks to see it. Right. But with that being said, what do you want the takeaway to be? You kind of touched upon the fact that, hey, undoubtedly we don't want to try to paint that as any kind of a pretty picture.
Right.
But on the other hand, there were some positive things that happened. Is that the takeaway, or is it more than that, Helen?
I think, it's that, and it's also, we're living in uncertain times, and no matter what your side of the aisle and your political affiliation, I think there's a lot of division occurring right now, even in present day. And so the goal of this project and everyone that's come together across races, across social economic backgrounds, is to say, we are still a community. We are still a people that believe in good, and we want to support one another. It's not about, what skin color you have, but about the content of your character and your heart. And so really it's about bringing people together and kind of revisiting our history and looking at it through a different lens.
I love hearing that, because I think that resonates in a special way to people here in Louisville.
Right.
We've had our challenges, but I do think we're a very inclusive community.
Truly.
I love hearing that coming from you. You and I both see it from a different perspective. But when you say that, and the importance of, let's keep that important. Let's try to, as you said, we are divided still in some ways, And if this movie can help people say, hey, if they can come together then, can we
Right.
come together now? Maybe it's different issues, but still it's all about being inclusive and love, right?
Love, yeah, love heals all. So 100%. Thank you, John.
I love that smile. that spoke to love right there. I'm really looking forward to seeing your film. So for folks who are interested,
Yeah.
name of the film and when will we be able to see it?
So the film is Lucy and Thornton. We just filmed a short film here on the grounds called The Birth of Freedom, which is the backstory of Thornton Blackburn. It's about his mother, and her name was Sibby. So it's her kind of journey and what she went through in order to inspire her son to do what he did later in life.
So Helen, we have a colleague of yours that we're going to be talking to here shortly.
Yes.
Yeah, okay, give us a little tease if you would.
Yeah, so Kenneth Parker is a Louisville native. He's involved in the community, and he was here from the beginning of our production. So I'm really excited for you to talk with him.
All right, if you say he's exciting, I believe he's exciting. So, all right, we'll be talking to Kenneth Parker. That's coming up next on Louisville Focus. We talked about the film Lucy and Thornton. Let's talk about the play that was also right here at Locust Grove. With me now is Kenneth Parker. Kenneth is a multi-talented. Let me see. You are a creator, a fashionista, an actor, and for the purpose of this interview, you are the stage director, correct?
Yes, correctly.
All right. So let's talk a little bit about the play being here. I think it's probably a natural progression. A lot of films start with a play. So Lucy and Thornton, perfect. Right here at Locust Grove, right?
Yeah, perfect, because they're from Louisville, Kentucky. So initially I got brought onto the project. Helen, we met on the film set, ironically. So she was like, hey, I got a position for you. Would you mind being interested in like a play that we're about to do? So the play was essentially about Lucy and Thornton Blackburn. And she was like, would you mind being the stage director? Because she knew I was pretty organized and like, she knew I could handle all the tasks of being a stage manager and just learning from like theater, because I didn't have any background yet in theater. So
For a young talent like yourself, Kenneth, this had to be a pretty exciting endeavor for you because, you know, not only are you learning historically, but you're learning about your craft and different aspects of filmmaking, and in this case, of putting on a play. So what was your takeaway from this experience?
my takeaway, it was pretty deep, because I am a black man. So being a black man and having the roots to Louisville, coming up in poverty, being able to be a part of this experience that like not too many people are able to do. So it really shaped and molded me into being more of a better actor, model, creator. So it inspired me in many ways to get back in touch with my community and just be in the roots of just home and like understanding what the magnitude of something like this means.
Yes, yeah. You know, what I gathered from the conversation with Helen was she said, you know, you learn one thing from books when you're in school and history, but I think with this play and then this film, you learn something totally different. And so I would love to hear from you, as you mentioned, a black man, very talented, history I would imagine very important to you. What was the takeaway? What did you find to be maybe the differences between what you learned in school and maybe this was a little bit of eye-opening? What did you learn during this play?
I started discovering a whole lot of Kentucky's history wasn't told in a lot of the history books, and it's very hard to not see that because we're one of the states that kind of had the in-between of, are we going to be rebels or are we going to be for the Union? So that not being told in our history, it was kind of hard seeing. So being able to dig up my own history, research, and just being able to travel around, going to different plantations, connected with 2nd Street Baptist Church right across the bridge in New Albany, understanding that they was like a essential road because they have the Underground Railroad. So a lot of the ways when they crossed the Falls of Ohio, they was using that passage to get across safe.
Well, you know, whenever you have a story like this one, because on one hand it's a love story, on the other hand there is the absolute truth of what was happening at that time. So there was a lot of challenges, and as I mentioned with Helen, some of them life and death challenges of trying to escape and earn the freedom that we all cherish so much. So with that being said, was it an emotional experience for you, Kenneth, to do this play?
When I first came and to Locust Grove, I literally bursted out in tears just because when I started reading my lines of my character and just understanding like the role of who he was and just being able to help people in a way that was greater than himself, it really touched me.
Wow. Would you encourage other black men, black people, white people like myself to see this play, to see this movie?
Most definitely, because this play, the movie, is more than about being black or being white. It's more about a unison, bringing people together, and understanding the past is okay and things are acceptable, and we have to move on and move forward into a brighter future. So until then, we're still going to continue to have the problems that we have now. So us bringing this film, this theater piece, is uniting people.
I agree with you, Kenneth. I think it makes the film relevant, what we're going through now. There's always a need for inclusiveness, and if there ever was a right time for this film, it probably is right now when, you know, we're teetering a little bit and we want to bring people together, and I think this film can accomplish that in a historic way, which is, it's crazy, but very much worth examining. So thank you for bringing this to life in the stage play here. And before we go, I want to familiarize everyone. I mentioned you have a lot of talent. So a fashionista, right? You're really into fashion. We'll talk about that on a later show. And of course, an actor as well. Do you plan on staying here in Louisville? And I'm hoping that's a yes, because I'd like to see more productions done here. So is it possible for a young talent like you to stay in Louisville and succeed?
Well, with the opportunities that Susie Eastman's been providing to the film community, it's very possible. Kentucky's a central-based state. You can fly just about anywhere, and it's just about the same amount of time either way to get to New York, LA. So I've been to New York and I've been to LA, fortunately, so I'm trying to continue to expand my career, but I do want to continue to call this home.
All right, so we know Locust Grove is an historical landmark. Maybe you came here for a field trip while you were in school, or perhaps an art fair, but now you know also the home of a play and soon to be a film. So Locust Grove, an interesting place to visit here on Louisville Focus. So now I think you would agree with me. Locust Grove is much more than what you learned on your field trip. We'd like to thank the kind people at Locust Grove for giving us great access, and we'd like to thank you for watching Louisville Focus. We'll see you next time.